There's been a flurry of news related to President-elect Trump's picks for various cabinet positions, but perhaps no one has received as much backlash or support, for that matter, as Robert F. Kennedy Jr. He, of course, ran for president as an independent, but then later dropped out and endorsed Trump. No question, he's a complicated figure, but we want to talk about him and President-elect Trump's pick for the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. And Meg Kilgannon, who is a senior fellow for education studies here at FRC, is joining me now. She previously served at the U.S. Department of Education during the first Trump administration. Meg, thanks so much for joining me. Great to see you.
Great to see you, Jody. Thanks for having me.
All right. Boy, there's a lot of buzz about RFK Jr. Tell me your initial reaction when it was announced that he was tapped for HHS.
It's been quite a week of announcements, right? So to have that one come yesterday was just the end of a really big week. I was surprised that it was HHS that he was being named to head up, but I was not surprised that he was given a prominent role in the administration. I mean, we remember that the Democratic Party refused to have a primary to challenge Joe Biden, but Robert F. Kennedy mounted a Democratic Party primary campaign before he left the Democratic Party to become an independent, right? Because they weren't going to have it. They weren't going to have any conversation on their side. And there was a long process of getting the endorsement from RFK Jr. by the Trump campaign. So I'm not at all surprised that he's been given a prominent role. As a pro-life conservative, of course, I would prefer a pro-life person in this position, obviously. But I think that there is a lot of common ground with this pick that we can obviously need to pray about and hope for really, really good results should he make it through the confirmation process.
Yeah, those are some good points, Meg. And, there's no question that this has been, this whole umbrella, if you will, underneath HHS has been a passion of his. He's been very much involved and outspoken, I'll put it that way, on his positions with so many of these. In fact, let me just do this, talk about the umbrella of HHS. This is an enormous agency, and some people may not be aware of just how big it is and what all comes underneath HHS. What are some of the agencies that come under this?
Right. Well, there's the Center for Disease Control, there's the Food and Drug Administration, there's the National Institutes of Health, just for starters. It oversees Medicare and Medicaid. There's a tremendous, there's $2 trillion of spending that goes through HHS, but a lot of that spending is not discretionary spending. A lot of that spending is entitlements, is healthcare for American citizens, and under the Biden administration for illegal immigrants. So, we have a lot to unpack with that, and it's a lot to oversee. But there are a lot of pressing health concerns facing Americans, and that is why Let's Make America Healthy Again part of the Donald Trump campaign, that was, of course, the RFK Jr. part of that, was so resonant with so many people. I think a lot of people were surprised in unpacking who voted for Donald Trump that he did pretty well with suburban women, all things considered. And I think that maybe RFK Jr. deserves some of the credit for that, because the concerns that he raises.
So what are some of the reforms that Kennedy has promoted that have resonated with conservatives and non-conservatives?
Right. Well, he has always been a person who has been interested in investigating some of the claims of the problems related to the vaccine regime that has been grown with the FDA's encouragement over the last 20 years. And he's willing to talk about that issue. And because he's willing to question that whole presupposition that vaccines are always good, he's been vilified in the media. But there are a lot of people who share his concerns. And of course, all of the controversy surrounding the so-called COVID vaccines just played into this. So there's a lot there that needs to be investigated and examined. And he is an attorney. He's known for his environmental work as well. He's a person who's familiar with how government works. And I'm curious. I'm enjoying thinking about what he might do and the kinds of things that he might question as the head of HHS.
I agree with you on that. I'm really sitting on pins and needles to just imagine where this is going to go. But now, Meg, at the same time that he's got some good things, he's got some things that he wants to uncover, investigate, get to the bottom of. At the same time, you alluded to this a while ago, that there are some potential concerns that conservatives have with Kennedy's nomination. You mentioned specifically where does he stand on the life issues, but unpack for us some of the concerns that probably we need to at least be aware of as this gets underway.
Well, there was a brief shining moment there in his run for presidency when he was asked some questions about abortion, and he actually gave some non-traditional answers from someone in the Democratic Party. He actually said, that he was for limits, and he made some very positive statements, but he unfortunately walked back. So I think where he is on abortion is open for questioning. And as a person who's pro-life, I don't want there to be any question, right? But we live in a democracy and a republic where I don't always get my way. So I'm going to pray a lot about this and hope for the best. And he does still have to make it through, through confirmation. So I would love it if there was talk of some other appointments in undersecretary positions of people who were strongly pro-life that could give maybe senators a little bit of leeway in supporting this nomination. There's all kinds of deals that are made in this process. And so we'll just have to see how it unfolds.
Yeah, good point. Those undersecretaries are critical. Less than a minute or so left, Meg. What do we know about his character? I would say most people really don't know much about RFK Jr.
Right. There have been some tell-all books written about him. One very recently that revealed some disturbing things about his character, and that will all be litigated by the press and by the Senate as he goes through the confirmation process. It's certainly not something that's going to be a surprise to anyone. So this again is something that we need to pray about. We're not asking him to be our pastor. We're asking him to run the Department of Health and Human Services. So
very interesting, and that question of character doesn't just apply to RFK Jr. Some of the others who have been nominated likewise are going to have to go through that fire. Thank you, Meg Kilgannon, FRC's Senior Fellow for Education Studies. Always great to see you and talk with you. We deeply appreciate your expertise.
Thanks, Jody.